The first scream over the radio wasn't fear, it was disbelief. They're everywhere. We're surrounded. 220 operators pinned. The transmission crackled, then turned into chaotic static. From the ridge overlooking the valley, Sergeant Liana, Sparrow, Hale froze, her finger resting lightly on the trigger of her suppressed sniper rifle. She had never heard men like these, battle-hardened SEALs, elite among elites, sound shaken. Something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. And she was the only one far enough, high enough, and still unseen. The valley below churned with gunfire, explosions, and fractured calls for support. The quick reaction force was too far out. Air support wouldn't arrive in time. The SEALs were boxed in by a coalition of hostile militias, numbers that defied logic, strategy, even sanity. But Sparrow wasn't included in the original operation. She wasn't meant to be part of the fight at all. She was just support, or so everyone thought. Liana had always been more quiet than confident. At least, that's what her teammates assumed. While the others joked, bragged, and compared scores, she preferred adjusting her optics or cleaning her rifle. And though she outshot most of them on her worst day, she avoided the spotlight. She knew what came with it: questions, doubts, and the constant surprise that a woman, this woman, could be the best marksman in the unit. The nickname, Sparrow, started as a tease, light, fragile, forgettable. But no one really knew her story. No one knew what she had endured to stand where she stood now. When she was 14, she had held her breath behind a collapsed brick wall as militants swarmed through her village. Her father, a teacher, had died shielding her. Her mother had disappeared in the chaos. And Liana, trembling and small, survived by watching everything with eyes that never forgot a silhouette, a shadow, a distance. She learned early that sometimes the only difference between life and death was one precise, impossible shot. That memory flickered now as she steadied her rifle on the crumbling rock under her elbows. Below, the SEAL teams were trying to break the encirclement, but the enemy commander, a ghost-like figure known only as Al-Murtakib, moved through the chaos with deadly purpose. Every attempt the SEALs made to escape, he countered. Every movement they made, he anticipated. Sparrow tracked him through her scope. He was the linchpin. If he fell, the militia would lose coordination. If he survived, the SEALs wouldn't. But he stood surrounded by civilians, hostages forced to move with him. No shot was possible. No one dared take it. Except one. Her spotter, Corporal Denton, slid next to her, panting. Command says hold position. No clear solutions. Stay put. She didn't reply. He followed her gaze through the scope and froze. You're not thinking, Sparrow, that's a thread the needle shot. If you miss by a centimeter. I won't. But he's moving. Civilians all around him. The wind is. I know. Denton swallowed, fear creeping into his voice even as adrenaline fired through him. If you take it and miss, they'll court-martial you. If you take it and hit a civilian. I know. Down in the valley, two SEALs carrying a wounded teammate stumbled behind a rock outcrop. A rocket slammed into the rock a second later, sending a cloud of fire and shrapnel around them. The wounded man didn't move again. Sparrow inhaled slowly. This wasn't about orders anymore. She adjusted the elevation by a hair, accounting for the crosswind threading through the canyon. She slowed her heart rate, pulse syncing with her breath. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Her world narrowed to a tunnel. Scope, target, breath. Denton whispered, his voice shaking, this isn't a shot. This is suicide. No, she exhaled. It's math. And then everything stopped. Her finger tightened. The rifle barely whispered. The shot flew. A single quiet thread cutting through chaos. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Al-Murtakib's knees buckled. The civilians around him gasped and scattered. His lieutenants panicked, confused, leaderless. The command net the militias used fractured into screaming chaos. And the SEALs, those who still could, heard it. They surged forward with renewed fury, breaking the encirclement line like a tidal wave through sand. What had been a death trap became a rout. Within minutes, hostiles were either fleeing or surrendering. But Sparrow wasn't done. She shifted to suppressing fire, neutralizing RPG teams, taking out flankers, clearing escape lines. Every shot was deliberate, protective. She wasn't hunting, she was guiding, guarding, shielding. The SEALs didn't know who was saving them, only that someone was. 20 minutes later the valley fell silent. Smoke drifted over the battered terrain as medics rushed in. Sparrow finally lowered her rifle, fingers trembling from the strain she had held back for far too long. Denton let out a breath he'd apparently been holding for the entire battle and whispered, "You just saved 220 operators." She didn't answer. She simply packed her rifle. Hours later, as dust settled and the injured were evacuated, a SEAL commander approached her. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with soot, but his eyes, sharp and assessing, didn't miss anything. "You the one on the ridge?" he asked. Sparrow nodded once. The commander stared at her for a long moment, then removed his helmet and placed it under his arm. Then, to Denton's shock, he saluted her. A full, crisp salute. One earned only in moments that change the fate of men. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "on behalf of every operator in that valley, thank you. You took the shot none of us could." She shifted uncomfortably, not used to praise. "Just doing my job, sir." He shook his head. "No, you did more than that. You gave us a chance to see our families again." Her throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to reply. In the months that followed, the story spread, not through official reports, but through whispers in barracks and camps, in late-night conversations and quiet acknowledgments. The Sparrow wasn't a joke anymore. She was the sniper who saved 220 SEALs with a shot no one else dared take. But for Liana, the real victory wasn't in medals or recognition. It was knowing she had turned her past, her loss, her pain, her years of silence, into a single moment that changed everything. A moment where a quiet woman with steady hands and a brave heart stood between life and death. And chose life.